Hey, everybody, welcome to another great episode of Secrets to Real Estate Investing. We have with us a repeat guest, which I was so excited to have on. I love to get updates from our past guests on what has been going on with them. We have with us today Andrea Arciga, who is also on episode 50. Today we're episode 114, so it's been a while, and I'm super glad to have her back. So with that, welcome to the show, Andrea.
Thank you. Thanks, Holly. Glad to be back.
So give us a quick synopsis of your background for people that maybe just are listening to this for the first time and don't know your background.
Sure. So again, my name is Andrea Arciga, and I'm a broker, and I'm the owner of Black Label Brokers. And I also have an investing group, or LLC, and that is Pretty in Pink Properties.
Oh, what a fun name.
Thanks. I've been in the business about 20 years now, about 10 years in mortgage, doing mortgages for people as a loan officer. And then the rest of the time was as a real estate agent, broker. And in the last, I guess it's about 4 years now, I have been an investor as well.
Very good. And now, are you doing any realtor work still, or are you focusing primarily on the real estate investing?
Yes, I actually was running a real estate brokerage with quite a few agents, and I kind of transitioned that into getting more serious and full-time in investing. And I have to be honest, I kind of was poo-pooing the whole retail sales world because I was really excited about investing. And that was in the last, say, year or so. And I think that I've actually come to realize and appreciate the bread and butter of real estate sales. It's not something that you can avoid anyways when you're in the real estate investing realm. And so I've come full circle, and I can say at this point, and I would like to announce this actually, I have realized what a blessing it was to have the background in mortgage and as an agent and broker, and to bring that to investing, I think really opened up the world of investing more so than it probably does for people who don't have that background. And I've come to have a passion to train agents that don't know anything about investing and are losing, sleep over their transactions, living commission check to commission check, missing out on children's holidays and children's activities because they work so much showing buyers and representing sellers. And so my mission for this year is actually to bridge the gap for real estate agents that would like to understand investing, how to better service investors so that they can have repeat customers, as you know, investors buy lots a year, not once every 5 years. And more importantly, how to actually open the world up to become investors themselves. So that's where I am in 2019. But in 2018, I wasn't really doing a lot of real estate retail stuff, but I am back to doing that and opening my brokerage to agents again.
Yeah. Very interesting. Well, thanks for sharing all that. Well, today, listeners, we're going to have Andrea talk about a couple of her deals from 2018. I love to get the real stories from real investors of what's going on, especially currently. So with that, Andrea, why don't you tell us about your first deal that you want to share today and some of the ins and outs, how you got it, and the lessons learned and the whole thing.
Okay, sure. So one of the things that I've enjoyed doing as an investor is really understanding the seller financing aspect. And I think as we move into more of a shifty market, we keep saying shift now, which I don't completely buy into, but now that we have some movement and a lot of people screaming shift, and sellers maybe being moving into more of a fear-based selling thought process, I think seller financing may become more popular again, something that I've done several times now, and so I'd like to share that one with you first. So I did a property, a very little 2-bedroom, 1-bath property in the city of Los Angeles. I actually, and again, this shows you how retail and investment really do mesh. I had put them into this property a few years prior to it becoming an investment for me. And they were actually going through a divorce. and hadn't put any work into the property, and it really didn't look very good. And one had already moved out, and so it was, kind of dramatic. And I sat down with both of them at the kitchen and said, what would you like to do? And they really just wanted to get out as quickly as possible. They didn't have any money to fix the property. They really didn't want to put any time and effort into any of that, and it was quite emotional. So it was really just kind of a take their money and run situation. So I was able to, figure out their needs, and from that, make a plan to take over their mortgage payments immediately, so that the weight of having two households to support was off of both of their shoulders. And I took over their mortgage payments immediately. They were, so basically I wrapped the mortgage, meaning that I became responsible for that mortgage payment. They still legally were responsible. That's something you have to know. Wraps something you would look up, because it's a little bit complicated, and you definitely want to use an escrow company who knows how to do those, because that can get a little hairy. But so I took that over, and that really helped them out, and then decided on a lump sum to give them immediately, and then a percentage to give them at close of escrow of my net proceeds. So that's how we worked it out, and they felt really good about it. Their other option would have been to sell it cash on the market, and they just didn't feel like they even wanted people traipsing through the property until the second person could move out. And so, it just worked out for them.
So I took, quick question. So you actually executed a purchase through escrow, and you officially owned it, but you kept their mortgage in place on it and gave them some money up front, right?
Correct. So
Okay.
We closed escrow. I became the new owner on title, but I kept their mortgage in place and continued to make their payments. And then what I did with them financially was kind of a side note, and something that was in a separate written agreement. That, of course, you notarize, and you want to have it worded properly to protect both sides, especially to protect the sellers, because they're the ones that, as a licensed broker, my responsibility is to protect them, even though they are, even though I was buying the property for them, I have a huge fiduciary responsibility, even more so as a broker, to do the right thing for them. Mm-hmm. So that's how we structured that particular deal. And then I will share with you, so that was a win, obviously, but a mistake that I made on that transaction is two things. One is I kind of delayed a bit in closing that transaction. So time went by. I let them stay a little bit too long, and and that was okay, but it took a little bit too long. And then I had another project that was starting, so that kind of gave me a lot of pressure. I should have just closed it quicker, started the project faster, and I didn't do that. Secondly, because I was seller financing and didn't need any money to actually purchase the property, just a very small lump sum for each of them, which I was able to pay out of pocket, I thought, all I have to do is fix it up, and I'll just use my own money, right? Because I've got some money on the side to do that, and I've got commissions coming in and whatnot, and I can make that happen. Well, that was a mistake, because they always say don't be cash, don't let yourself be cash poor, and utilize other people's money, right? Get a hard money loan, get it all put in one place in the bank account, and go as fast as possible. Well, because I decided to do it myself, I had to move slower, because I did, I paid one guy, and then the next thing I did as soon as I could, and so it just dragged on, and I finally ended up taking a loan, and probably lost a good amount of money, because time is money.
Yes.
So I think in that, I'll never do that again. Even if I feel like I can afford to do an investment again, I will probably always seek out a large padding, even if that's all it is, as a hard money loan or private money. I don't think I'll ever do it on my own again, because that time, it really just took too much time. And I would say I probably lost, the transaction would have been a couple $100,000. It was a nice, meaty transaction. And I probably lost about half of that just doing it wrong, because I also was hiring people and thinking more hiring people on the skinny, kind of cheaper work, because I was doing it myself. I was subbing it out myself. And when we did the home inspection, there were things that just weren't done quite right, that the buyer wasn't comfortable with. So I lost the first buyer. and then stayed on the market, and it was just crickets for a couple of months, and that took, you know, time and money because I'm still paying the mortgage. And then I ended up getting that same buyer back, but had to do some foundation work and fix some electrical stuff that his inspector wasn't comfortable with. So again, all in all, it was really truly because I didn't take out that loan and just hire a contractor right off the bat.
So that's what you would have done. So a couple things sounds like you would have done differently. Number one, gotten the previous owners out sooner. Is that what you're talking about? Getting them and
it wasn't so much getting them out sooner. It was even when they were out, I just dragged my feet on closing the escrow. I didn't, I was kind of trying to time it with another project versus just getting it done and thinking about the timeline, setting deadlines and sticking with them. I was very lackadaisical about it because it was such an easy transaction, because I knew the people, because they had already gotten paid out. They didn't care what I was doing. And then there was some stress about having a vacant home in a certain part of LA. So just overall, it could have been handled a lot more efficiently.
Yeah, definitely. I understand that. Boy, I feel like every deal I do could be more efficient.
Don't you?
know,
Yeah.
In hindsight, it's actually like, well, if I'd done this better and been on top of that contractor or got a different contractor, yeah, it's easy to second guess yourself.
Yeah.
So, but you still ended up making some money at the end of the day, I hope, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Good. That's always great. Well, tell us then about your second deal that you're willing to share with us today.
Absolutely. Okay, so the second deal is actually in another part of Los Angeles. It's what I call, so the first area that I did it in was kind of just a flat area, meaning that, you know, it was single family homes, all small, not a lot of movement and sales in that area. So it wasn't whatever I had comped it out at, it was probably going to stay about that value. This particular property that I took on, and I'd like to share how I found it, because that's everybody. I know that I always ask that question first. How did you get the deal? I got the deal through the MLS. I actually didn't get it. My partner actually was taking Iris's 60-day challenge, and during her homework for it, was searching on like Zillow and saw the property and saw that it had been on the market for a long time, brought it to my attention, and I started making some calls. And I would like to share this part of it because a lot of people who are agents and brokers feel like the deals aren't on the MLS, or so seldom that they find them on the MLS, they don't spend a lot of time looking there. I disagree with that. If there are certain criteria that you can look at, and if you actually take the time to make the call to the agent and ask the appropriate questions, you'd be surprised what you find out. In this particular case, this agent, although he didn't admit it right away, or never really did admit it, he was defeated by this property. It had it was a single family residence that had been illegally split into two, and it had two different tenants. One did not speak English, and the other one was kind of a passive aggressive type. So he wouldn't say what he wanted or didn't want, or whether he'd move. He would just kind of be really agreeable, but then he just stubbornly wouldn't really do anything. So, and he wanted a lot of money to move. So this agent and the owner, who was an older gentleman who didn't live in the area, I think both of them were really defeated. And so the property stayed on the market for quite a while. Calling and asking the right questions, and it really has to do with the questions and your demeanor, and trying to just be a helpful soul in the process, opened it up for me, where I actually got them to let me go in and speak to both tenants, so I could assess what was happening. I speak Spanish, the gal in the back speaks Spanish, so I was able to see what was happening and pretty much why it wasn't selling. And you know, after I did my comps and decided what I would want to pay for the property, and made sure that the seller was on board with, you know, somewhere around that range. Then I took the time to drive to LA, meet with those two tenants, and really I facilitated the entire deal by doing that, because I was able to determine, you know, what their motivation was, how much I was gonna have to put to the bottom line to pay off both of these guys to leave. You know, I could tell how many people were living in the first unit, and, you know, really assess the whole situation, because my experience level was much greater than the listing agent.
So let me jump in and ask you, how many people were living in the first unit, and how many bedrooms was it? Was that an issue or not?
Okay, so the front unit was two bedrooms and a makeshift bedroom and one bathroom. And I would say there was probably about 6 to 8 people living there.
Wow.
Maybe more.
Okay.
Maybe more. In the back, it was 2 people living in there, and it was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath, 2-story, kind of like a little mini townhome, sort of the way that it was built. It was a 1900, like 1910 or 1920 home, really in very, very, very poor shape. I mean,
So
just there was
100 years old and
it was a 100-year-old
probably
home.
some deferred maintenance.
Oh, I mean, I don't think they had ever updated. They had updated very few things, and when they did it on the cheap. So it was a really bad house, bad condition. So I walked the property, negotiated with the tenants. It took a few trips to negotiate. Had to call the city because there is rent control in LA and deal with a lot of that kind of stuff. There were mistakes made on my part because I made calls to certain places and was getting kind of 50% of people were saying one thing and the other 50 were saying another. And I was talking to lawyers and I was talking to the city. I was looking online, and I think it's a case of hearing what I wanted to hear. And long story short, well, this is a long story period, but in terms of the tenants, when you have a property in Los Angeles or in any rent control area that was illegally rented, like the garage was rented out illegally, or they blocked off a wall and rented it to 2 different parties, even if that property is an SFR, which wouldn't be considered under rent control, once you illegally rent out another piece of it, it automatically falls under rent control. And rent control in LA is quite strict. And they require, if the person's over 50 years old, right around $15,000. No, I'm sorry, $19,900 or something like that for them to be asked to move.
Oh my gosh!
Even if you're the new owner.
Per person or per?
No, it's per family. It's per family.
Okay, so on your front unit, how many? I mean, would that just be per that whole unit, or did you have to pay that more than?
Just based on the lease.
Okay.
Just based on the month-to-month rental, contract that I inherited. And then in the back, it was about, I think it was right around $10,900 or something like that. So it was a pretty significant amount of money I was going to need to pay these tenants. And I knew that going in, and there was enough margin for that in case that happened. And it did happen, that he was strong-arming me. He wanted the money in advance in cash. Then he would move later. It was just kind of a really crazy situation. And we ended up having to go to, court to evict. I had to go to LA court early morning, like 3 different times. And if you can even imagine what that's like, it's absolutely horrendous. So I was dealing with all of that stuff. So that happened on that particular transaction. I also had, one thing that I want to mention is, well, it's a great story in that I found it on the MLS. There was a good margin there, and it was an emerging market because this property was just blocks away from USC, and just in an area that I could see just from driving around that there was a lot of new construction. People were remodeling and developers were picking up commercial properties, and because they were putting in that the new stadium just literally down the street from there. So, and then of course USC was probably about 11-minute bike ride to this property. So I had lots of different ideas and what I was going to do with it. I got a hard money loan to begin with on the first. That was about $3,500 a month, and I share that because it was sizable. And then, and realize I'm 4 or 5 months in, 6 months in at $3,500 a month, and I still have tenants in there. Oh. When I finally got them out, they left so much trash. They literally purposely left it on the street so I would get cited. Oh. So when I went there the next morning, the day they were supposed to leave, it was all over the street, and I had to immediately call a dump company and pay whatever they wanted to charge me because I had, I wanted to go home, and I had to wait there for them to pick up all the trash because I couldn't leave it overnight because I would have probably had fines. Wow. So those are the kind of things that can happen. I say I'm going to share this story with you because it made it what I considered kind of a tough year in 2018, but really to turn my frown upside down, it was actually the best year I ever had because I got through it. I learned so much. So anyways, past the tenants, I demoed the property, and then so I had a first. I also had gotten a friend of mine who was begging me to be taught what I was doing and wanted to be a part of it and wanted to learn. said, I want to do a deal with you. And I said, well, I'll let you know when I have my next one. And I did. I said, okay, I've got this property going in LA. And this is the circuit, this is what I need. This is how much money I need for the gap funding. And I'll, teach you the ropes and, so on and so forth. And she was super excited. Where do I sign? Where do I wire? Let's do this. I've done some investments in the past, but nothing, no fix and flips. So I didn't really vet her well enough. I didn't really think about her risk aversion issues or, the fact that she's kind of a big spender, so she might have the money today and need it tomorrow. And that's exactly what happened. So, before the tenants were even out, she started kind of harassing me about the money, wanting the money back. And I said, we've got a 6-month note plus an extension. So I can extend another 6 months because I knew that there would be tenant issues. And I told you that. And she really just wanted her money back and was like, can you sell my interest to somebody else? Which of course, that's a really hard thing to do when you're in the middle of a transaction and the property's just barely being demoed. So fast forward to, the lesson was make sure that money can come from the sky sometimes when you've got a good deal. But it's really important to vet who you're going to get into bed with on transactions, because it was very, very stressful to have a friend / partner or investor harassing you, talking to other friends about it. And it was awful. It was awful. And then, on top of that, I had, unfortunately, my mom passed away right around that same time. So it was just raining, on my head. And it was awful. And and as an investor, and I'm a seasoned person, I wouldn't say I've been investing that long, but I've been around. I've owned many, many properties and flipped my own personal properties. I'm pretty confident. And really that shook me enough that it slowed my investment career down because it was just really stressful. It was a big, big learning, a mistake. So what ended up happening is she started to kind of threaten to foreclose and wouldn't give me the written extension, even though the note called for it. So I had to get a lawyer involved, and she got a lawyer involved who was actually a friend of mine that we both knew mutually. So that was just, stressful.
Oh
and
my gosh.
Yeah, it was awful. And then I said, well, I'm not going to keep fixing it because you're going to foreclose on it and you're not going to let me finish my investment. So I ended up doing, and this again is, I don't know how an investor would have handled this that didn't have my background. And that's why I think it's so important to kind of have both. So what I did was I put the property, even though it was demoed, right? And at a glance, you'd think there's no way you're going to break even on paying your first and your second back because the property is horrible. And, the market was starting to rise, but not that fast. So I put it on the MLS and thought, well, let me just give it a shot. So I put it on the MLS myself, started fielding phone calls. Of course, a lot of no's, a lot of you're crazy, not going to give, a lot of low ball offers compared to what I needed to make my first and my second hole, and literally to just dump this project and move on, because that's mentally what I needed to do. And I was very fortunate to find a developer who wanted to see, remember, this is one thing you have to think about as an investor, even as an agent. We see properties one way, but the next guy that you ask might see a completely different best use of that land. And your experience says everything. So I don't have experience as a developer. I haven't done ground up builds. I haven't built apartment buildings. These guys had. So they saw that. I saw an old house that needed to be fixed up, and best case scenario turned into student housing or, multiple Airbnb rentals, turned into a duplex because it already had a lot of that components, already put in place for the utilities and stuff. But a developer saw it as a great piece of land in an up and coming area that he could put 12, 16 units on. So that was way beyond anything I know, right? So while I'm crying, thinking I'm not going to be able to ever sell this property, I'm screwed, for lack of a better term, this guy came in and said, this is what I'll do with it. I'll take it. And I was able to make both of them whole. Now, the second person, the gap funder in my pain in my butt that year, who wouldn't support me to continue the project, was actually threatening to foreclose, wouldn't take a dollar less, wouldn't take just what she was owed and not separate, maybe not the interest, because she didn't allow me to, since I lost so much money and she didn't allow me to make any money on the project. So my attorney recommended that I just make her whole, and then if I decide so, I could go after her and sue her, which is crazy to talk about because it's the first time I've ever sued anybody in my life. But I went through so much that, and it did affect, I literally I had 3 transactions that I couldn't pursue because I was too busy drowning on that property.
Oh
So
my
I
gosh.
actually
Wow.
I actually did make the decision after some thought to go after her for the amount of money that I should have made on that property. And I won.
Wow.
Yeah, I was just informed that I basically won. So yeah, so
Well,
that's
congratulations, I think.
thanks.
So,
Yeah. I mean,
wow.
it was a long road, and again, I don't think I would do it again, only because of the stress that it put my family through and myself.
Yeah.
And I could have done 3 or 4 deals for that one that we just dragged on and on. But I will say that it was the best learning experience. I mean, I dealt with understanding and getting more confidence in dealing with the MLS. Working with another agent and not really stepping on his toes, but working in unison with him to be able to get the property, right? Because otherwise he was going to lose the listing. So, that was a win. Tenant issues, I found an amazing attorney that helped me with getting the tenants out. I understand now how the LA, tenant laws work. It just, like, everything happens for a reason, they say. So I just feel kind of like I got my warrior investor badge this last year. So yeah, I'm excited for 2019 because, I mean, there's no way it's going to be awesome.
Nothing can be harder than that. So did you end up making money, losing money, or breaking even on that last one that you talked about?
I lost money, but now with the lawsuit and winning the lawsuit, I will be probably at about break even.
Okay.
I'm sorry, not break even. I will make exactly what I should have made after attorney's fees and everything else. I will probably make dollar for dollar what I would have made had I just fixed the project up, sold it the way that I had planned to. Yeah.
Well, good. Well, I'm really glad for you. You sure went through a lot for that. And it was way more time and energy than you probably initially anticipated as
Yes.
well. Oh,
It can end, I'm telling you, that kind of transaction can end an investor's career for many reasons. Had I had more than one other transaction floating, I could have lost other transactions and lost more money. And, it set me back quite a bit mentally and financially. But I will tell you that, I've shared that story. It's a hard story to share because, it brings back stuff I don't want to think about. But I share it because you're going to have great years, you're going to have great transactions, and you're going to have really piss poor ones.
yes.
And that's just the name of the game. And if you can get past them, if you can be solution-based, not crying yourself to sleep and just thinking, what can I do next? I mean, I put it on the MLS, even though I thought 100% in my mind, there's no one that's going to pay what I need to get out of this project. Because I called a broker girlfriend of mine and said, this is my situation. I'm feeling despair and I can't get past, looking at the problem. And she said, shut up, hang up the phone and put it on the MLS right now. And had she not said that, and let me say her name, it's Tina Hernandez. She actually owns the Omni Group. She's an amazing investor. Has a brokerage in Oxnard and one here in Santa Ana. Had she not said, shut up and put it on the MLS and don't call me back till you have, I don't know, I probably would have lost the property because, and that's another thing, you have to have a network, you have to trust your friends. 2 heads are better than one, and we don't know it all. And sometimes even as confident as I feel like I am, and even as solution-based as I am, I mean, I've gotten myself out of all kinds of things because I always look at the bright side and I always find a way. Sometimes you need to go out to somebody else and get advice and heed that advice. And so that it was really an amazing year and really eye-opening for me that I really learned a lot and became stronger and a better investor. So this year, as I told you, I'm following my passion to open the door to other agents like myself. I was a single mom the whole time I was a real estate agent in mortgage, lost a lot of good years with my kids that I can't get back. And I would watch people around me be investors and didn't understand how to open that door for myself, and no one was opening it for me. And that's why I have this passion to do that for others. That's why this year, it's my year to give back. And I'm also not being afraid this year. I tended to be afraid at every project, have panic attacks about every project, whether there was somebody that broke in or I was worried about, the numbers or whatever the case was. I ran scared a little bit in my investing career. And this year that's really changed for me. I'm actually right now negotiating on some lots so that I can do my first ground up builds of SFRs. And
Wow.
I never thought I would be doing that. I went and met with a guy who's doing it. And he opened the door there for me and just showed me how easy it is. And I thought, why not? Why hold, just the other side of flipping, because I know you flip and I flip too, but why hold a $500,000 note or a $300,000 note if, for those of us that don't have that kind of cash to buy it outright, when you can buy a $50, $60, $70, $100,000 piece of land that you have to hold while you build. You know what I mean? And the difference in the payment for that, I've been in the partnerships for that. It's just, there's a lot of upside there. So that's what I'm doing.
That's cool. So we'll have to do an interview when those are done and you can tell us all about those stories.
Yes,
That's good.
I will. Just the negotiating on land has been really interesting.
Oh yeah, it's a whole different animal for sure.
It is.
Well, thank you so much for coming on and sharing the raw, the real stories of these two deals. I think it's been really interesting and really helpful. And listeners, don't be discouraged. Look at Andrea pulled herself out of it. She's still pressing forward. Persevere. Call your friends, call your peers, call your mentors, whoever, when you hit challenges, and get through it. So for those of you listening, if you'd like to get the show notes for today's show, you're going to go to hardhatholly.com/114. We are show 114. That's hardhatholly.com/114. Also, to be on our weekly text alerts of when we have new shows coming out and new free downloads, just text to the number 38470. That's 38470. You're going to text Hard Hat, all one word, no spaces, to 38470. Hop on my little text alerts. You'll get a text once a week when we have new shows and new great freebie downloads there. So, Andrea, what are your final words of parting advice you have for us?
Be brave, and but listen to your gut. Sometimes it's not fear in the project. Sometimes I had gut feelings about that second project. I really felt uncomfortable about it from the get-go, and I thought it was me being scared to do the project, but it was something more than that, and I didn't follow my intuition. In terms of not moving forward with that project. So there's a fine line between knowing that you're just being a little scared about a project and thinking, you know what, maybe this isn't the one for me. Listen to your gut, number one, but just overall, just be brave, because investing is an amazing, amazing career to have. There's ups and downs, but there's lots of money to be made. And you really can't have the kind of time that we have to ourselves and make the kind of money that we do and help the people that we have in any other career that I've ever seen. I just think real estate is amazing in whatever sector of real estate you're in. Congratulations. You work for yourself. That's something to be proud of. And, if you ever need help, definitely put my email address there. I love to help people. That's another thing. Whatever you learn, share it, people. Share, share, share. You will get it back tenfold.
Thank you so much.
And that.
And what's your website too, if people want to find you online?
Absolutely. So the best place to find me really would be just to email me or text me directly at this point. So my number is 714-501-9155. My email is andrea@blacklabelbrokers.com. You can also find me on Instagram. My personal Instagram is the best place to start, and that'll lead you everywhere to my other companies. And that's at I am Andrea Arciga. IAMANDREAARCIGA. Start there at my Instagram, and it'll take you everywhere.
Cool. Thank you, Andrea. You've been awesome. So listeners, get out there, take some action, and be brave.
Happy 2019.
All right. Thank you. Hey there, thanks for watching the video. Make sure you like it and click subscribe to get notified of more videos. And you can go to hardhatholly.com for a free download on secrets to finding great deals.